the ultimate form of communication. Psyops being like the top to bottom of it all, right? So we have Remilia is a group chat. And there were a lot of comments early on like, okay, but your thing is formed out of a Twitter group chat, like that's a little silly. But what you realize eventually, if you hang around stuff long enough, is that everything is a group chat, top to bottom, right? George Soros has a group chat. I guarantee you, George Soros has a group chat that he carries out all of his international politics through, right? And everything winds up just being a collection, a think tank of people who wind up doing the same things that we did, where they just brainstorm, they bounce ideas off each other, and they try to come up with they want to influence public perception, and the ways that you influence public perception are by saying, okay, we want people to think this, they currently think this is the surrounding context, and you have enough creativity that you basically connect the wires, right? So it winds up all being sort of an art project, in that you have to creatively be able to figure out what buttons you're going to push, what levers you can use to get people to think what you want them to, right? And this isn't like something that's, again, not unique to Remilia. This is something that like every marketing department does this, every government does this. Teenage girls do this also. And it all happens at varying degrees of efficacy, right? Like there's definitely a teenage girl group chat somewhere out there that's winning, beating out all of the other teenage girls, crushing them in terms of the drama spread in their high school. And one day they're going to grow up and they're going to be brilliant marketers, right? They're going to be brilliant artists. And Scorch, what do you have to say about the group chat origins of all this?
Yeah, that's the dynamic we were always trying to say, that like a bunch of like gossiping like people at a cafeteria table is no different from the CIA basically spending thousands of dollars to disseminate information and control narratives. It's a very natural human thing ever since the parasite of language was invented and forced us to communicate in that manner. It's always been about framing and narrative and perspective. In a way, psyops is something every single person does every single day. You look at yourself in the mirror and you have an idea of yourself that you want to perpetuate. Other people have a different idea of you, and they all carry on with these different frames of reality. Before Edward Bernays kind of pushed marketing as the big thing, the natural state of a corporation was that if somebody goes to a major corporation in the United States and says, "What's going on internally? Why are you guys doing this?" the socially accepted response was, "Mind your fucking business." And after that, after public relations got invented, that was no longer an option. That you have to have transparency, you have to have a PR guy, you have to start participating in psychic warfare, because if you don't, the other guy will, and you'll get beaten out. It's just pure game theory. Psyops is important to art. Psyops is a form of art, and art is implicitly psyops, because an artist has to take something that's produced out of pure instinct, a natural inclination based off of feeling, to invoke feelings in other people. And I feel like most artists don't fully have a top-down, step-by-step process on how
they
to
don't
create.
they don't understand that art is the context, right? Like Milady is art, but like Milady wound up being what it is because of the context surrounding it, right? If it wasn't for what the people who wore the Milady did, it never would have been what it is today, right? So everything has to be looked at in terms of the context of it all. And art isn't created in isolation anymore. Net art is a thing because what is the net? The net is everybody connected online, which is inherently like a collective thing. There's now you basically cannot create anything involving a culture or context with any degree of isolation. It has to be sort of painting on the social fabric. Anything that comes out now, any sort of new art, is going to be making a cultural statement broadly about the net. Effectively, that's where we all live now.
Yeah, I would say Milady really kicked things off, but I think it's important to remember we got our start through perseverance, not just boundless momentum. Crypto is sort of defined by these ADHD levels of, just fast momentum. The meta during 2021, which, by the way, in terms of visuals, the NFT meta was absolute dog shit. You would have like PNGs of like rocks and like people putting out shitty Fiverr art and like the cheapest possible pixel monkey garbage. Milady legitimately was the first beautiful generative NFT. It was the one we put actual effort in, and we've always followed a philosophy of if we wouldn't appreciate it if it wasn't an NFT, we wouldn't sell it as an NFT. That's what Milady was about. That's a profile picture that you would wear with or without like the financialization behind it. And the meta
and that was the case too. That was the case because in the early days of Milady, we didn't mint out. People were wearing it specifically because they liked the profile picture, and that was sort of what curated it uniquely as a community, right? There was, like, you have Bored Ape Yacht Club or something like that. If the shit wasn't worth like $5 million, would anybody ever have that as their profile picture? Like, would anybody willingly put the picture of like the Fiverr monkey art on their avatar? Probably not.
I could guarantee you
People,
on my life, I could hold a gun to every Bored Ape yacht holder's head and put them on a polygraph and ask them, would you have appreciated this if it wasn't worth a couple $1,000s? And nobody would pass that test. They would all be gone. They would be wiped from this earth. The Milady didn't sell out for 6 months, and it sort of established the Remilia bucket pattern. We did it for Remilio. It happened with Yayo NFT, where essentially, if you don't sell out in 5 minutes, you're supposed to give up, right? You're supposed to go away. You're supposed to just change your name and start a new project and do another pump and dump. But we held on for 6 months and we proved our community and we fermented our culture into something that's actually viable. That's what gave it value too, because an NFT is supposed to be a tribal signifier, where we're literally saying like, hey, this is the tribe you belong to, and the tribe that we turned Milady into is the one that people want it to be in. So that's what gave it value. But I think the bucket pattern is always going to happen. I don't think we've reached a point where we could put out anything and people will just say, "Oh, I want that," and it sells out in 5 minutes. I think every
well,
project,
the bucket pattern happens by virtue of us basically pushing new frontiers, right? So the thing that happened with Milady was not that, like Milady didn't get better after 6 months. It didn't suddenly gain value, right? It was always the same thing, but it was just crypto Twitter basically being on a half-year lag, figuring out, oh, like, this is good, right? Like there was a lot of posting that had to come through for them to start getting it, right? An example of this was like, there was the way that Milady started like reminting out again was this influencer named Bulma. And I was going around basically trying to mess with a lot of the crypto people. One of the things that I did with her was I sent her a DM where I faked a screenshot of her pretending that she was going to kill me. Pretending that she was going to like cut my head off in some like exorbitant way. And I was like, oh my God, like, are you really planning to kill me, Bulma? Like, is this true? And she didn't respond. And then I had my secretary every like 30 or 45 minutes hit me up throughout the workday over the next 3 days or so. So I have this series of like 40 messages. It looks like I'm just nonstop thinking about Bulma murdering me, right? Like I'm horribly worried about this thing. And I started asking stuff like, Bulma, like if this is true, like if you're really going to kill me, could you give me a heads up so that if I only have 3 weeks left to live, I'd like to take PTO. Like I don't want to spend my last 3 weeks alive in the wage cage. She didn't respond, absolutely heartless. And then I finally finished off like another screenshot of her saying, like, I am going to kill him on March 27th. Like if he thinks that this isn't going to happen, he's a delusional retard. And I was like, Bulma, this is extremely disheartening. So then I go and I start following her around on the timeline saying like, hey Bulma, like, could you check your DMs? She didn't respond for like 10, 15 of them or so. And then eventually she was like, oh my God, like you're a deranged freak. Like you're an insane person, man. So she takes she takes the whole conversation and posts it, and all of crypto Twitter starts like, oh my God, this guy's a deranged freak. Like he's evil. Everybody block and report. And I was like, oh no. But it was probably like 80 to 90% of people on crypto Twitter who didn't get it at all. Like 1/3 of my mutuals probably had me blocked at that point. I got a lot of not very nice DMs from people. There was definitely some hatred and vitriol going on. But then I played it out in the comments, right? I basically LARPed it off. Oh yeah, I am genuinely afraid this person's going to kill me. And it was like, she's some like nice posting like vegan woman, right? She would never kill anyone. It was obviously like an insane thing. And the reason that we didn't I was thinking about actually putting the screenshots up on this screen, and we decided not to because they're so not subtle that if I showed them all to you right now, you would think they're not funny. Like you would be like, oh, this is so obvious of a joke that it's like stupid and bad now. But that's just a testament to the fact that like that's how far the open window has shifted within the sphere. Like 3 years ago, stuff like that didn't pass as like an obvious joke. It was like, oh, this might actually be an insane person. And that's largely due to like Milady posting overall as a theme, as a concept of just dragging the open window, forcing everything to sort of be normalized with it, right? In the same way that like the yayo shitcoin concept, like, oh, we're just going to accept that this is an aesthetic project. People are buying this for the meme of it. People are buying this because they think that it's fun and they like the way it looks. That's something that like that's common now. That's every shitcoin. Every shitcoin has now become an attempt to recreate yayo, but like they're 3 years later, right?
I think
Go for the
I
sports.
think a lot of that shitposting mentality too kind of came from like biz culture, like the 4chan biz board. That's where a lot of like that's where WagMe comes from. That's where the PayPay memes come from. Crypto kind of has a lag between that sort of thing. They're just now rediscovering the red laser eyes that was like a 2019 Twitter core, but they really lost a lot of that edginess and that actual internet culture feeling, especially when more retail marketing came in. You look at the timeline now; it's complete shit posting. Everybody pretty much acknowledges it's pure gambling. Uh, Remilia kind of had to reintroduce that edginess a little bit, and of course, in art, you're supposed to push the boundaries of the medium that you're in and the topics that you handle. Uh, and you get slapped for it sometimes, and I think this kind of led into what the cancel was for us, where people, they were kind of afraid of what we had to say. They were kind of uncomfortable with the irony, and they were uncomfortable with the satire. This is kind of where the psyops comes into. Uh, we had been participating in this sort of half truth, half fiction kayfabe on the timeline long before this. This was something that Charles and his prior communities they were very adept in. We had obviously gone through several cancels already through his different personas as Mia and Sonia. But we had also had this air of mystery to us where people weren't sure what was real and what wasn't. We had fabricated cancels on ourselves before. We had performatively, enabled them. And this was real, and a lot of people weren't even sure if it was just another shitpost. But people 100% wanted us dead. It wasn't our doing. And I think I think it's important to mention too that it's not just us doing psyoping. This is a mutual thing everybody sort of participates in. In the spaces, for example, one person in particular, I'm not going to name names here, but a very big CT influencer basically paid like three women that were like in their mid 40s and they sounded like the white trash lady that is on meth and screaming at the cashier at the bus station. They basically paid them to put on Miladies and say like, well, I've been a part of the Milady community for months, and I think Remilia just needs to get out, and the community just needs to run itself. People that nobody had ever heard of before or cared about, people that weren't part of our community, they were sending in like George Soros tier astroturfers to push this narrative that
I,
the
I would
and,
say it was substantially lower than George Soros to you astroturfers, but uh, you
well,
can define it as you want.
They were trying to push this very common narrative that happens to other projects too. This happens all the time. People will create something, outsiders come in, and they find some way to declare that this guy's toxic, we need him out, and the community needs to run itself. It's that decentralized meme. Turn it into a DAO. Let the community go where it wants to. And that's just fundamentally, not capable for a small startup, community until it becomes a viral egregore on its own. And they,
Well,
they do this so often.
specifically for Remilia, right? Because so much of what Milady was, and as it has been defined, was like, it didn't just like fall into itself, right? Like the image itself was curated to give off like the type of energy that Charlie wanted, but like it wasn't specifically from the image. Like Milady posting came from us. It came from Remilia, right? Like Remilia members were platformed as, the Milady posters. So when you wanted to like seed the idea of what is Milady posting, like that came from Remilia. It wasn't just like this organic thing that appeared out of nowhere, right? Like that was in itself like a psyop. It was like a marketing operation. So the idea that you're gonna say, oh, we're gonna wrap Miladies, we're gonna make them open to the community. It's like, okay, well then who curates it, right? Because the person who's been curating it is now removed from the picture. Do we think that it's going to remain the same community? Or do we think that something like every other NFT community that exists is going to happen, right?
And gatekeeping is super important for that. But we've grown larger since. I think the cancel was also. It's funny that it actually we were in Portugal when the cancel happened, so it's a nice little coincidence that we're coming back. They were basically in like a bunker mansion, all just kind of watching it unfold. And within that travel period where they were going through different Airbnbs across Europe and kind of remote working on projects, the cancel precipitated what would eventually become Remilio Redacted Babies. The redacted stands for retarded, by the way. Uh, Remilio was 100% us declaring we are now post-cancel. Like we're immune to your identity politics bullshit. We're immune to disingenuous narratives, and it 100% played with cancelable topics. It was sort of a satirization of the QAnon schizo tier posting, mixed with a sort of playful, boyish Target T-shirt, middle schooler, smoking Smarties type aesthetic. And that's kind of how Remilio came into play. This was supposed to be a very silly, small thing that we were gonna do. It was just, wouldn't it be funny if we made our community play dodgeball with each other, basically? So the way we decided to execute that was to create a completely false narrative that Remilio was just a random derivative that was a cheap dollar store ripoff of Remilia Corporation. Even the name was like, you go to the dollar store and you buy a GI Jim action figure. And Lukas was, told to switch to that profile, and for a while people hadn't understood that it was actually Remilia that released the project. We were very unclear about it, and we purposefully didn't announce it normally. In the Discord specifically, the Milady Terracell element is that each chat, by the way, is its own community. So every single person in every medium that discusses Milady believes that they are 100% the singular Milady community, and there's sort of there's a little cross-pollination between them, but they're all slightly separated from one another, and that's done on purpose. We want everybody to sort of be self-sufficient, so if one goes down, the other still survives, like a Hydra. Um, in Discord particularly, we carried out the war on the timeline, and I think that was more your territory. But what we had
Yeah,
done,
yeah, no. So
go ahead.
okay. So the Milady Remilia Civil War was really because this was how we launched it, right? So we never told everyone like, oh, this is like our new collection that we were launching. Partially because we wanted to have some fun with it, but also partially because we wanted to flex on everyone. We wanted to say, okay, we did it once with Milady. We can do it again now without our own reputation. Like we can still do the same shit. We can still build the community. We can still create the same cult without even saying, oh, this is Remilia. And the plan basically was going to be that we were going to come out and, it is just a derivative. And I said that I'm defecting from Charlie. Like I had like creative differences. He's evil. I'm not going to be friends with him anymore. So I'm endorsing this other project. And I made like a custom Remilio that, it was basically my Milady, but with like a bunch of blood splattered on it, and it had like a halo over it. It was in heaven. It was basically like I've killed my Milady, like I've killed my past self, and I've come out now and become this new Remilio. And I just started posting a bunch of like super silly, like totally valence critiques of Charlie that they didn't really mean anything. And he would like respond being like, "No, Lukas, like how could you do this to me?" And it was. I thought it was going to be overly obvious, but it wound up like giving everybody actual like brain damage and trauma, right? Like all of my friends who had been very involved in the Milady community, they were messaging me like, Lukas, like, how could you do this? Like, what did Charlie do wrong that deserves anything like this? This is fucking horrible. And then they start fighting, right? Because some joined me, and there were other like Remilios. So people would defect and join me. Maybe they liked me more than Charlie, and then there were other people who remained with Charlie, and then people started fighting, and we planned to do this for about a week, and then we had to cut it after like 18 hours because we were killing like we were seeing like marriages being blown up, like lifetime friends abandoning each other. Like all of these people were actually like at each other's teeth, and it still to this day is something that annoys us. Like we went too hard accidentally. Because we want the whole like Remilia ecosystem, obviously, to be friends with each other, right? We want everybody to be like a whole holistic community. And now we accidentally did this thing where we drove like a massive wedge between everybody, and they're constantly trying to kill each other now still. Like there's weird battle tensions from this traumatic incident that we created on the timeline as like a marketing gimmick.
Yeah, we 100% accidentally balkanized the community a little bit. In the Discord specifically, what we had done was create a separate label color for Remilios, so that it was sort of a Stanford prison experiment. We assigned a few to people randomly, and there were chats about strategizing this meme war between the two sides. I was in both chats, and I was kind of giving advice to both lieutenants who were running each division. I would produce memes that would make fun of each other, basically just cheap regurgitations of like Giga Chad versus Virgin, Wojak versus Pepe memes translated into Remilio versus Milady. And I was giving instructions, and I was also doing balancing, so if one side was starting to win too much, I helped the other side more. And we perpetuated tension to the point that I feel like a lot of people were smart enough to pick up that it was it was basically just like play. It was like pro wrestling. It was Kayfabe, but kind of like how pro wrestlers will get into a performance so much that it becomes reality, and sometimes they'll actually fight each other and break Kayfabe. It was sort of seeming to happen. People were starting to actually pick sides and attack each other, like our little Stanford prison experiment gone wrong. And like Lukas said, it still perpetuates to this day. It's not as extreme. We've took actions to kind of neutralize it a little bit and get people to get along, but Remelios will still duke it out with Miladies on the timeline, and this extends actually into the singular projects where Remelios will fight each other. They'll have asset wars where someone Nikobs versus Onis versus nuns. That kind of happens with a lot of our projects now, where people pick a grail and then they pick teams. It's a natural human tendency to tribalize, and I think it's only going to get more extreme the more we release and the more our community grows. But yeah, definitely got a little carried away there, that's for sure. These kind of psyops kind of extend into our other projects as well. I want to talk about Beetle Game a little bit. You want me to get into that, or do you have any perspective on how you got familiar with Beetle Game first, Lucas?
I think you should run through Beetle Game. We got about 7 minutes left, by the way.
Okay, so Beetle Game essentially was this super hyped project. I took a nap. I took a fucking nap in an afternoon, like for 3 hours. Normal work day, nothing's going on. All of our projects running on maintenance, no news, no new developments. I go to sleep and I wake up and the chat is going fucking crazy. It's like people screaming Beetle Game in all caps, and like Charles is yelling like, do this, do that, like make these assets, code this, like, and he's typing out long thesis about what Beetle Game is gonna be. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And they're like, Scorch, this is a project we're going to launch tomorrow. And I'm like, what the fuck? This wasn't a thing when I fell asleep. We basically did a methed up all night hackathon type, just constant push to like get this out in 24 hours. It wasn't what we wanted it to be by the next day. It was sort of like a rabid lucidity after we calmed down and we're like, holy shit, what were we doing? you know, it wasn't good enough. The tokenomics weren't where we needed it to be. We didn't have enough art. We were gonna shelf it for a while. It almost became a pain point to us, where we were basically like, okay, well, we'll look at this later. We'll approach it later. But the community picked up on it, and everybody went apeshit. They were like, oh, Beetle Game, Beetle Game. When's Beetle Game coming out? I think Beetle itself, the symbolism gets people like amped up. They become like insects. They get haywired. Um, so we used that when we wanted to market Banners. Banners was a quick in-between project while we were working towards releasing things like Yayo NFT and Bonkler. Uh, for Bonkler, like specifically, because it began with a B, and because we were releasing a project called Banners, we were like, okay, why don't we tease the community a little bit? And Charlotte would post like a thing saying, he would just post the letter B, and then he would encourage people. Like, we had to seed like the ladders on Twitter, like, you know how they make an N ladder that you get banned for. So we were making like B ladders. So one person would reply O, and then people would spell out Bonkler, and then another person would post E, and then they would spell out like Beetle Game. And for a while, everybody was like, "Oh my God, Bonkler's coming out! Oh my God, Beetle Game's coming out! Beetle Bonkler, Beetle Bonkler!" And then, you know, we would announce, "Hey guys, the long-awaited Banners project you've all been hearing about finally comes out," and everybody was super pissed at us. They were fucking furious. So it became a tease for a while. Beetle Game almost was sort of mythologized into the magnum opus that would never be, like Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon movie. But I guess I wanted to take the time during the Psyops talk to say that Beetle Game is definitely coming out very soon. So that's just wanted to mention that. And
Development has been ramped up on Beetle Game.
yeah,
This isn't a psyop.
it's not a psyop. It's actually coming out very soon. Um, but yeah,
I think speaking, they want to talk about Yayo.
so the Yale Corporation was my first foray into Remilia. I witnessed the I Long for Network spirituality show. But as far as the actual corporation and what it entailed, Yayo Corp was my first assignment. I came in on the Telegram to do community management, and what was special about that is that I was basically given free reign to kind of run it how I wanted. And what we wanted to implement was a sort of communication insurgency, where people would essentially each be an individual that you could imprint an idea upon, and we wanted each of them to be like a sleeper cell soldier. We wanted everybody to propagate Yayo, and we wanted it to carry on past our own existence. Like, if we suddenly stopped, we would want Yayo soldiers to be continuing for years, like that one Japanese guy who fought World War II for 30 years in the Philippines. And, it was somewhat successful. We had essentially created a very high energy environment, which was built around satirizing the shitcoin concept of 2021, where you would essentially have people that would, join these telegrams, and they would tell each other like, "Oh, I believe in this coin. This is really great. This is what I want. You know, this is going to be the next Bitcoin. I'm going to use it to pay for my gas." And it's like Doge imitation coin number 637. They would be writing up white papers. They would be taking it very seriously, and it was all bullshit. It was people mutually bullshitting each other because they wanted to gamble on basically just high volume liquidity nonsense coins that were going to be disposable within 2 to 3 months. And you would go into these telegrams and they would spam rocket ship emojis, and everybody would carry on with this mutual scammer mentality of basically they go in and they think, oh, well, I don't really believe in this, but I'm going to say what I have to and pretend to be friends with everybody else. But they're all thinking that. It was a mutual environment of extreme greed. Remilia saw that, and we wanted to cut right through it like a Gordian knot. And we wanted to say, hey, these white papers that you're writing about shitcoins, they don't fucking mean anything. These these tokenomics, these primitives, they don't exist. You're just writing smart contracts and gambling like everybody else. And the only reason you're picking one Dogecoin out of another is because you like the aesthetic the best. And so we said, if that's the reason why people are making their decisions, what name they like, what picture they like, what aesthetics they like, who has the best website, who has the best written white paper, why not just utilize the full force of a think tank and art collective and make the best looking one? And that was Yayo. So that's how we got our start there. And I think Lucas has a little bit to say about that and how we kind of applied that Terror Cell group chat concept fully into Milady when we released it.
Yeah, I mean, I would also like to say that Yayo itself was hilarious to me because I never saw that I never saw the direction that Scorch was given with anything, right? I just saw him go into the group chat, into the Telegram, and start forming essentially a series of terror cells. And I was assuming, oh, like he must have been given some sort of instruction to do this, right? And then later, I eventually realized, oh no, he's just going. This was entirely, he just felt the vibe, and he was like, this is what I'm supposed to be building out. And we've got about 30 seconds here left, so I think we should probably wrap up. But what I wanted to say basically is this concludes the start and end of the Remilia Black Ops division. This was our final PSYOP. We're going to be closing down. It will never happen again.
Yeah, we're never going to PSYOP again. You know, we told you all our secrets. Everything we'll say is above board. We will never do another PSYOP forever now. It's over. Black Ops is done. And frankly, the Black Ops division never existed in the first place. Don't worry about it.
Good luck. Good luck and Godspeed.